Hello tonight on The Wrap. Europe boycotts the World Cup. Red card for Infantini. UEFA say none of its national teams will take part in any FIFA competition unless it abandons its plan to put the World Cup up for sale. Britain's biggest nuclear power station is on alert over a wildfire just 3 miles away. More than 100 firefighters are fighting the blaze. Border chaos. Spain sends in the army after thousands of migrants overwhelmed border guards and stormed the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. And a row erupts over Diane Abbott's readmission to the Labour Party. The UK's leading Jewish organisation calls it an early test of resolve for the Burnham administration. We'll discuss the day's biggest stories with the Labour peer and broadcaster Baroness Hazarika and the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Michelle Donnelly. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers in half an hour's time. Hello, good evening. England, Scotland and every other European nation have voted to boycott the World Cup. The unanimous decision is designed to stop FIFA boss Gianni Infantini from selling a stake in the tournament to private investors, led by the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law. And this evening, a second confederation, CONCACAF, has also rejected the plans. Well, Aisha, this is very much a red card for FIFA, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's really shocking and it's really depressing when you think about the origins of the World Cup, you know, hewn from the First World War to try and bring people together, not to make a quick buck on it. I'm really glad that countries have come together to boycott collectively.
Michelle, might this be the end for Gianni Infantini?
I think, well, hopefully, given what he's trying to achieve. This really is the commercialisation and Americanisation, I would argue, of the beautiful game of football, which is meant to be an equaliser where anybody can get involved, and this is about sheer profiteering.
Well, one observer today said that UEFA had gone for the nuclear option after they released this statement. UEFA said, "We unanimously and unequivocally reject FIFA's proposal to transfer ownership interests in the World Cup and other FIFA competitions to private investors. The World Cup cannot be treated as an investment product. It is one of football's greatest sporting legacies. It has been built over generations by players, national teams and supporters across every continent. Some things are simply too important to sell. The FIFA World Cup belongs to football. It always will. And so long as Europe has a voice, it will never be for sale." Well, here's what the former chief executive of the FA, David Davis, had to say.
Those of us who've been here before in the days of Mr. Blatter as the General Secretary and Chief Executive and President of FIFA, never thought we'd see those sort of days again. For me, this is, for UEFA, make up your mind time. I mean, the relationship between FIFA and UEFA has gone downhill again in recent years. And here we have 55 nations. Their strength is their unity. For example, there is no point in England alone or Germany alone or France alone coming out of something like the World Cup. Together, yes, they can knock a huge hole in the World Cup, and is a World Cup, a truly World Cup without Europe. On the other hand, 55 members of UEFA, and there are some 211 members of FIFA these days. So Europe are not in a majority. And there are countries, a significant number of countries in the world, who are not great fans of Europe. I can tell you of that, and they're not great fans of UEFA.
Well, that story features on the front of the Mirror with the headline, "Red Card for Infantino." We'll have a full rundown of what's in the rest of the papers at past. But let's just get more thoughts from our guests. And Aisha, to you first of all, I mean, there is a real power struggle going on at the top of football here, really, isn't there? Who's going to win?
Well, to quote Michelle, I hope the beautiful game wins. You know, I just think what is so depressing about this is this kind of collision with all this sort of what looks like, as you said, kind of gross profiteering and, of course, the Trump family as well. And Donald Trump did not cover himself in glory intervening in the World Cup, getting that sort of, red card, that player ban overturned. And I had to do a really interesting discussion with somebody who's a real football historian. That's only happened 3 times. And one world leader who did that was Mussolini back in 1934. That is not good for football. We need the world to be coming together. Football has provided so much joy for so people like me who aren't even that much into football. The World Cup provides this platform for countries to come together. It should not now become another bit of sort of corruption and profiteering, which is linked to the Trump family.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt, that President Trump seems to be involved here. He's struggling with the war in Iran. Has he maybe met his match when he comes to football?
It's ridiculous, really, because the lead investor, if you like, of this project would be the brother of Trump's son-in-law. So he's very, very close. And let's not forget what this is coming off the back of. This is coming off the back of the World Cup, where we saw eye-watering ticket prices that priced a lot of people out. We're talking thousands and thousands, 7,500 some of those tickets were. And then we also saw the water breaks that were never there before, which were an opportunity for more commercials and revenue generating. It's just changing the nature of football, and this is really a step too far, and that's why we've seen UEFA act decisively quickly today.
And Aisha, I also just thought, when you looked at UEFA's statement, the way it was worded, I mean, it was beautifully written. Really strong words, irresponsible, indefensible, profound failure of leadership. It's not a democratic decision. And those lines at the end, there are moments where institutions are judged not by what they're prepared to accept, but by what they refuse to compromise. This is one of those moments. You can almost hear the orchestra striking up on the hill behind them. Some things are simply too important to sell. The World Cup belongs to football. It always will. And so long as Europe has a voice, it will never be for sale. They're not messing around here, are they?
They aren't, and that's very powerful rhetoric there. And I think, in a way, it's interesting because I think if you kind of overlay this with a lot of sort of the bigger things that are happening in geopolitics, I think we are beginning to see Europe sort of standing up a bit more to Trump. We saw Meloni having that bit of a spat with Trump. We've had the Spanish saying no to Trump. Even our government probably at some point will say, look, enough's enough. And I just think that there are lines in the sand. We do want to have good relations with America and the White House. Of course we do. But there are also kind of lines which we won't cross. So I think you're right. I think the politics behind this and the optic behind it and the fact that all of these countries have come together unanimously. It's not like people are one by one trying to do some horse trading. This is a real sign of European solidarity saying respectfully but very firmly, no.
Yeah, so UEFA said no, CONCACAF said no, and also the Asian Football Confederation, Sheikh Salman, who's the president there, has expressed concern and disappointment at the lack of consultation. So, all of these different players in the world all seem to be sort of gently coming together. I mean, what is FIFA without these various clubs? Well,
that's the point. I think if just one or two countries had come forward and said, we'll boycott, then it would have proceeded. Now, with the volume, it's going to be very hard for them to carry on, despite the fact that they'd already got it in training. They did no consultation. They sprung this on everybody. And this was meant to be all being sorted out in October. So we're talking like less than 100 days. So they had this really cooked up for a while, one would assume. It's not good form. And it's really divisive when football is meant to be a unifier of people.
We'll see what happens over the next couple of days, but it might be curtains for Gianni Infantino. Right, so thank you very much for that. Well, here, Britain's biggest nuclear power station is on alert, and a huge wildfire is just 3 miles away. More than 100 firefighters are trying to stop its spread, with helicopters picking up seawater to douse the flames. Our science and technology editor Tom Clark reports.
Hot on the heels of drought and record-breaking heat, fire season has arrived in England. Raging between the sea, a nuclear power plant, coastal caravans and cottages, this Suffolk heathland is ablaze. All the wildfire needs is fuel and a breeze to fan the flames, both in abundance here. Tinder-dry scrub funneling flames into parched trees above. The wind is now taking the fire away from the Sizewell B nuclear power plant, but on this popular stretch of Suffolk coast it still threatens homes and holiday parks And wildlife too. This coastal heathland and adjacent wetlands are nationally important habitat. In the early hours, the fire service had the blaze under control, but then the wind picked up. A helicopter, 18 appliances from across the country, and 120 firefighters are now hurrying to contain it.
They are confident that their tactics are working and they are making good progress, attacking the fire from the north of where the fire is by digging trenches and filling in with water as well, and that seems to be working. So good progress is being made. That said, anything could still happen until the fire is out completely, so it's still moving about at the moment.
The scene below me is pretty apocalyptic. This enormous wildfire, 100 hectares it's covering, spreading right down to the sea. I can see numerous fire crews spread out, and the fire's broken up into multiple fronts, with the winds changing erratically apparently at the moment, making it all that more difficult to contain and control.
Power has been cut to around 116 homes as flames encroach on pylons. Dozens of people were evacuated overnight from homes and caravans threatened by the fire and given refuge at this village hall.
It was concerning. It wasn't too frightening because at that stage the fire wasn't too close to ourselves and our lodge.
As we were leaving Minsmere Road, we could see red flames sort of behind Mount Pleasant Farm, that sort of area. So we knew we'd made the right decision.
The fire is dwarfed by those on the continent in recent days, but it's still visible from space. A heat-detecting NASA satellite picking up this hot spot over Suffolk. And this latest assessment of fire danger shows how much of central and southern England and Wales are now at higher wildfire risk. Whatever the spark, wildfires are an inevitable consequence of weeks without significant rain and one heat wave after another. For the emergency services, infrastructure providers and anyone else who's experienced this summer's weather, a reminder of the new normal to which we have to adapt, while a changing climate holds our feet to the fire. Tom Clark, Sky News, Dunwich Heath in Suffolk.
Well, let's get the thoughts of our guests here, Michelle and Aisha. And Michelle, the speed that this fire seems to have escalated is quite scary, isn't it, in the proximity to Sizewell?
It is, and they were very worried about the wind changing direction, and obviously that would impact whether it could get to Sizewell or not. And we're just not geared up for this, are we? As a nation, we expect to see these scenes in countries like Greece, and we don't have the fires on this scale. And this is something that we need to get better at dealing with, and look at the amount of resource that's being poured into this.
We do, don't we, Aisha? And I wonder, you think when you travel to those hotter countries, and you often see when you're walking in the countryside lots of signs about wildfires and those great big things that they used to sort of smack them out as well. I don't know what they're called, wildfire smacker-outers.
I think that's
like big shovels,
term.
sort of leathery shovels. But do you think this is going to have to start be something that we start teaching our kids, beaters? Someone cleverer than me tells me.
Well, I think Michelle's right. I mean, the climate is changing, the weather conditions are changing, and you've got these terrible scenes in Suffolk, and the fact that this is edging towards a nuclear power station is incredibly worrying. But also look at the Cairngorms in the Highlands as well. They have had now well over a week of these fires that they can't seem to sort of put out. So you can have a big fight about net zero and everything, but the reality is the climate is changing. We are having more of these fires. And Michelle's right, we're going to have to think about resources and infrastructure and how we try and factor these into life in Britain.
Funny you should mention the row over net zero, because Andy Burnham confirmed today that he did promise Donald Trump that he'll be pragmatic about drilling in the North Sea for oil.
I indicated in the phone call that we had a week last Monday that I would take a pragmatic approach when it comes to the North Sea, and that is my intention as we go forward from here. There is a resource there. When people are struggling, you can't ignore that, and hence me indicating that to the President.
So, Aisha, is this going to be a tricky conversation between him and Ed Miliband? It's something that Ed Miliband's fought hard against.
I think Ed Miliband is just very delighted to be Foreign Secretary, and I think he is very much backing Andy Burnham. And I hope Andy Burnham does take a pragmatic approach to this. I think we have to have a balanced conversation about, our energy needs going forward. We are going to need a mix of things. We are going to need oil and gas. We also need to ramp up our renewables. We also need tidal. We need nuclear. We also have to do better in terms of insulating our homes and being more energy efficient. We've got to have a kind of broad conversation, and nobody should be ideological about sort of one thing or the other. We have to have a kind of sensible practice. Being a Scot myself, I know how many, really well-skilled jobs they are in that Aberdeenshire area. I do think that the Jackdaw and the Rosebank fields, I hope they do go ahead. I think that's not going to solve all the problems. Certainly you could get sort of gas to, I think it's estimated about 6 million homes from one of those sites in about sort of 6 months to a year. But that's not going to solve the problem immediately. We've got to have a kind of balanced conversation across the entire spectrum. Also, the Times was reporting over the weekend, the grid has to be properly, and we're talking about infrastructure, the grid has to be looked at properly to make sure that it can cope with the changing demands in energy, and it can cope with getting more renewables into the system. So we've got to have a sort of calm, pragmatic discussion about energy.
Michelle, is this going to take the wind out of Kemi Badenoch's sails a bit, because she's really pushed Keir Starmer on this, and if Andy Burnham is going to go ahead with it, that's going to take her fire away a little, isn't it?
No, I think it's proven her right. I'm not a fan of the fact that Andy Burnham let Trump know before he let the British people know, but that's by the by. I think this is, if he does this is the right thing to do, because we haven't had that pragmatism so far, and we have been led too much by this blind ideology. And where has it got us? We've still got half the country in drought. We've still got wildfires in Suffolk. And we've got to be realistic. We are 0.8% of the CO2 emissions. China is tripled since the early 2000s. We have to be now talking about how do we safeguard our energy supply? How do we have that energy mix? What is sensible? What's going to also add to employment? And also, how do we adapt our nation to the changes that climate change is bringing?
Well, staying with politics, and Diane Abbott and Jayne Reid have been readmitted to the Labour Party and had the whip restored. East Kilbride MP Jayne Reid voluntarily suspended herself after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China, whilst veteran left-winger Diane Abbott was kicked out of the party last year after saying she didn't regret previous remarks about racism, which sparked an anti-Semitism row. Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Rob Powell. Rob, what is the Labour Party saying tonight?
Yeah, so the Labour Party is basically saying that on the process side, they've gone through this process, it was free of political interference, and they've come to their conclusion. I think it is the Diane Abbott readmission that is ruffling feathers maybe a little more than the Jayne Reid one, as you might expect. Just to kind of go through the backstory of that. It was last year when she was suspended, but actually that was the second time she'd been suspended in as many years. The first time was in 2023, after she had basically written a letter to the Guardian newspaper suggesting that Jewish people didn't suffer racism, but rather prejudice in the same way that people with ginger hair suffered prejudice. Now, she was suspended then by Keir Starmer at the time. Then there was huge pressure in the run-up to the 2024 general election to readmit her, to allow her to stand as a Labour candidate. She was readmitted then, but then last year she was asked about those comments and whether she regretted them, and she basically said, no, I didn't regret them. But what she also did was put out a post at the same time where she talked about the Jewish Defence Forces rather than the Israeli Defence Forces. Both of those elements were investigated in this investigation for the last year. She was given a formal warning, but eventually readmitted, and she posted an apology online this evening in which she said, today, following a process conducted in line with the party rules and approved by the independent review process, I've been readmitted into the Labour Party. I've been issued with a formal warning for a tweet I previously posted. By inadvertently referring to the Israeli Defence Forces as the Jewish Defence Forces, I used wording that conflates the actions of the State of Israel with the Jewish community. I'm deeply sorry for any hurt caused by the conflation and apologise for any hurt caused by it. I've been and remain a lifelong anti-racist and remain deeply committed to opposing racism in all its forms. I think a couple of things I'd say about that. You'll notice that she's apologising for the Defence Forces comments there. But she's not saying anything about the doubling down of the comments about racism that were also formed part of this investigation. Now, I'm told part of the reason for that is that the finding against Diane Abbott in this investigation was specifically about the Defence Force comments, because essentially the racism comments had already been investigated. But I think it does beg the question that if she's apologising for that part of it, does she regret the other bit of it? Or is she still essentially standing by that bit of it? Because that's what got her into hot water a year ago, saying that she doesn't regret it, basically. I mean, I've asked her that this evening, but I haven't had a reply.
Yeah. The Board of Deputies of British Jews have put out a statement reminding people of those things, and the reason that she was originally suspended, saying the Jewish community is experiencing historically high levels of anti-Semitism, including the murder of 2 Jews last October at Heaton Park Synagogue. And they say it's hard to conceive of the whip being restored unless there's a clear and sustained evidence of genuine remorse, a proper understanding of why those comments were so hurtful, and an unequivocal recognition that anti-Semitism is racism. See,
this is the other crucial bit, that whilst the process to restore her membership is a party thing, that's something that's laid out and goes through, and it's independent of the leadership and politics, it's a separate process to give her the whip back, to essentially allow her to be a Labour MP. That's a decision that's for the Chief Whip and ultimately for Andy Burnham. You remember when Jeremy Corbyn at one point was given the membership back.
She hasn't had the whip restored.
She has had the whip restored, so she'll be able to be a Labour MP. When Jeremy Corbyn was in a similar situation, he had his membership restored, but Keir Starmer said, no, you're not coming back into the Parliamentary Labour Party. So he continued to sit as an independent MP. And I think that is why you are getting, the Board of Deputies commenting like that. Jewish Labour movement as well have said, essentially, that if Diane Abbott's conduct falls below expected behaviours, they expect Andy Burnham to act. So I wouldn't say there's a huge backlash against this, but I think there's just a few people sort of carefully watching, if you like.
Aisha, as a Labour peer, what are your thoughts?
Well, look, this has been a very difficult issue, and anti-Semitism was a huge stain on the Labour Party, and I think to give full credit to Keir Starmer, he really took this issue head on and has done a lot in terms of the party, to the point where people have returned to the party, very high-profile figures like Luciana Berger, for example, who got hounded out of the Labour Party because of anti-Semitism. So, look, this independent investigation has been done. I understand that this will cause some distress to Jewish community, as Rob has sort of said. I do think Diane Abbott is a really important figure in the Labour movement, and she's a very important figure in our politics.
Why doesn't she just say sorry for those earlier comments?
I think I have seen her say sorry a number of times in terms of when she, for example, wrote that letter to The Guardian. I think she then said she tried to kind of retract it from The Guardian. She had said she made a mistake, and so she has alluded to making a mistake. But what I hope Diane does now, she was the first ever black woman to be elected to politics. We talk a lot about the abuse that people have in politics. Diane has had, was the first person to get that amount of abuse, and, the stuff she has had is horrific. And I think she's a really important part of the Labour story. I think she's a really important part of black and Asian people having representation in this country. I think she has made a mistake with those comments.
She should still be held to the same standards as every other MP,
well, she's had this investigation, this independent. I do hope that Diane will take time to educate herself, spend some time kind of with the Jewish community, learning. There was a Labour MP called Naz Shah who made some wrong comments. She proceeded to go about actually spending time with the Jewish community and faith leaders, trying to understand why those comments were so hurtful to people, and actually has done a very good job in terms of sort of rehabilitating. So I think I would like to see a bit of grace given to Diane Abbott, and in response to that, I would like to see, yes, Diane saying, look, I am really sorry for those comments, and I'm going to understand why those comments were so hurtful, because as the statement from the deputy and the Board of Deputies, anti-Semitism is at an absolute record high in this country. You had the Heaton Mosque attacks, you had the attacks in Golders Green. I went to visit my local synagogue in Streatham recently. You have to have security guards outside. That's not fair for a community. So I hope that Diane recognises that and vocalises that. But I also hope that she can have a place in the party, because for a lot of particularly black people and the black community. She was a real trailblazer and she was a real pioneer. And I hope that there is a kind of a decent way through this.
Michelle, do politicians need to get better at saying sorry? Do politicians perhaps need a little bit more humility? They're only human. They may well misspeak. We all often make mistakes when we open our mouths.
Well, I think the British public respect that as well, don't they? Because they respect it if people are honest and hold their hands up and say, you know, I shouldn't have done this. I didn't mean this, or explain the thought process behind it rather than try and cover it up and hide it and make the situation worse. In this case, I think a lot of people, especially within the Jewish community, reading the commentary that's coming through, are just a bit confused and concerned about this because she hasn't come forward and given that frank and full apology in total. And also, Andy Burnham has chosen to give the whip back very, very soon into his premiership. So what message does that send out when the Labour Party has had that stain of anti-Semitism and has been trying to tackle it? Does this now mean that it's going to go backwards? And what does this mean about his stance on this and how much he prioritises it?
Only time will tell. Well, let's turn to something else that Andy Burnham hasn't really spoken much about yet, and that's migration and some extraordinary pictures of the chaos at Europe's borders. Spain is sending its military in to restore order in the Spanish territory of Ceuta on the North African coast after migrants from Morocco overwhelmed police. Thousands of people broke through the land border into the Spanish enclave, with many others swimming from neighbouring Moroccan beaches. Officials in Ceuta say the border has totally collapsed and the situation is absolute chaos. It's interesting, isn't it, Michelle, when we talk about migration, when we think of people come to this country on boats, we forget, perhaps, I think here, that this is actually happening in lots of other countries as well.
It certainly is, and this is off the back of a Supreme Court ruling where there was basically a loophole has now arisen, and people traffickers and smugglers have utilised that to encourage, I believe, some of these people to go forward and to swim through so they could then access Europe, basically. And this island is, to all intents and purposes, European. It's got Spanish citizens living on there, and this will be their gateway now. And, of course, Spain did give that amnesty too, which has sent out a massive signal, which has backfired, I would argue, because look at this. These scenes are quite shocking. The volume of people, it is a crisis situation. The local government have called it a crisis situation there. And we're seeing predominantly, looking at the footage, young, very agile men running towards this nation.
Aisha, we've seen over 720 coming across to the UK on small boats in the last day. We've seen a surge in the last few days as well. The weather's been fine. We've not heard much from Andy Burnham yet in this first week or so on this. Do you think he needs to
No,
set
I mean, he
out
did
his
get
stall?
asked a question about it today, and he did say that this is a really sort of serious issue. And certainly when he won the by-election in Makerfield, this was an issue that was a big issue for his constituents, and he has acknowledged that. Look, this is a problem that so many countries in Europe are facing. And this is a situation which is not going to get any better. We've just been discussing the climate crisis. When you look at big movements of people, they're often driven by two things, conflict and climate change. So this is an issue that the whole of Europe is trying to sort of deal with. It is shocking, the number of people that are coming over, and it is a massive issue of concern. Just to Michelle's point, it isn't just young men. In fact, 4 people tragically lost their lives in the Channel, I think, in the last sort of 48 hours. I think 3 of them were actually women. So you are right, there's a lot of men coming, but it's not just men. So I think it's...
Predominantly.
Sure, but I think it's also just important to recognise that 3 women have just died as well coming over. So, look, this is a problem that, you know, we've got to try and work with our partners internationally and Europe. I think the numbers have actually started to come down. We know that legal migration is also coming down a lot under this administration, with some of the legislation that was and rules that were put in under the previous Conservative administration, to be fair and objective, although it did sort of shoot up under them. But look, this is a really, really difficult situation. There is your heart goes out to lots of the people who are just wanting to flee, and they want to come to Britain for a better life. But we have to look after our borders as well. We have to find a way where we do take our fair share of refugees, but we also have to have a migration and an immigration and asylum system which the public has confidence in as well.
Yeah. Well, coming up next, we are going to take a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Don't go anywhere.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Well, time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Red card for Infantino, reads The Mirror, as 2 football confederations reject FIFA's plans to sell off the World Cup. The Star reports 55 of UEFA's member associations backed proposals for a boycott. And The Express says the boycott could see England pull out of the qualifiers for the 2030 World Cup. While The Sun goes with the headline, Football's staying home. The front of the Eye labels UEFA's stance as a game changer. Elsewhere, The Telegraph focuses on the Labour government planning an £18 million council tax raid. The Daily Mail reports Prime Minister Andy Burnham's plans to break away from Ed Miliband's net zero agenda by drilling in the North Sea. The Metro leads with the huge wildfire in Suffolk near the Sizewell B nuclear plant. The Guardian reports that the Labour Party chair Bridget Phillipson has written to the Electoral Commission calling for investigation into allegations of sleaze against Reform UK, claims which have been repeatedly denied. And finally, the Financial Times has the Bank of England holding interest rates at 3.75%. So perhaps no surprise that the tabloids have all gone with the football. Michelle, you know, a red card. None of them have a brilliant save from UEFA. That would have been a good one, I think. That would have been a good headline. Do you welcome this? Do you think this is going to stop this in its tracks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the papers are echoing the fact that fans up and down the nation are incandescent seeing this news today and want as much pressure applied to stop this. We all love the World Cup and look at how the country almost comes to a standstill when it happens. Nobody wants England to not participate, but we cannot sit by and just let this profiteering and commercialisation of football happen by what seems like one individual that's got in a room with Trump and cooked up something that is not in the interests of the game, not in the interests of the fans, and has to be stopped. And the fact that there's now power in numbers means that there's a better chance of doing that.
It seems extraordinary, doesn't it, Aisha, that Donald Trump, who admitted himself that he didn't really understand the rules of football, he didn't really understand what a red card was, has so much power that he could potentially shift the way that the whole game is run.
I mean, it's so shocking, but then again, are we sort of surprised? I mean, I just think you've got somebody in the White House who just looks at something, and if he sees something kind of shiny, but he's like, yeah, I'll just have that, and see if my weird extended family can profit off the back of it. I mean, you know, when you take a step back, it is absolutely disgraceful, in my view, about how his extended family seems to be absolutely just profiteering off the fact that he is the president. And now you have this, you know, we've just had this rare moment where actually the kind of country came together over the football, right? Everybody, even I as a Scot, enjoyed watching England do so well in the football. And just a moment, you're thinking, this is actually a great game. This is the power of collectively bringing everybody together. It was wonderful. And now, thanks to Donald Trump and this ridiculous Infantino guy, who's just utterly awful, pathetic creature, in my view. The idea that they are single-handed just like ruining the whole thing for everybody. This should be about the goals. There's already a lot of money in football. This is now kind of just off-the-charts greed.
Yeah, and it's not like football hasn't had allegations of corruption in the past, is it, Michelle? You know, I mean, Sepp Blatter had a lot of allegations, and even he's come out and said, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah, look, there's no love lost when it comes to FIFA. They get a bad reputation, and quite rightly so, for a number of reasons. But this is crossing the Rubicon now. This is the extreme. And when we look back at that World Cup, you know, when we think about the fact that those ticket prices were pricing most fans out, the fact that they introduced those water breaks for commercial ads, they also, you know, Trump photobombed the trophy ceremony, which was the most awkward thing I have ever watched, because it's just so abnormal. It doesn't normally happen for a politician to be there and to gatecrash it and make it about them.
It's the 60th anniversary today of England's World Cup win.
Oh,
don't want to rub it in.
Well, you know, it was a long time ago. No, listen, I'll tell you something. Even as it was very lovely, I think, genuinely, to see the country come together, because we are living in very raw, polarised times, and it was just very nice. So everybody was like having a wee chat about it, and it was like, you know, the chat, bus stops, pharmacies, it was like, oh, where are you watching the football? You know, it was a really kind of great thing. But also the fact that Donald Trump got involved and got that player ban overturned. I mean, it's really, really shocking. I mean, given that that's only happened like 3 times and 1 time is like Mussolini, I just do think this is a really important moment for countries to come together, show solidarity, show collective action, and say politely and firmly, but no, we are not having this. There's got to be a line in the sand.
And I think, you know, grassroots football is a big thing. You know, for people who've got young boys, like I do.
And girls.
Yeah, and girls, that's absolutely true. Go. You know, I see firsthand the impact it has on kids, on discipline, on teamwork, on responsibility, exercise. Those some go into refereeing. You know, it's a great thing, and to have that held up as a paragon of this is what you can achieve, and to have that smashed from above is heartbreaking as a parent when you've got kids involved in it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know that my husband's plan for our children, whether they like it or not, is to become Premier League footballers, and that's our pension plan sorted. But
Great.
But no, a lot of children look up to footballers as their role models and their aspiration, and look at what the Lionesses did for women's sport and how that transformed our attitude in schools and the availability of football as well. And it does bring people together. And all you need to play football, really, is a football and a group of people, because you can make the goals from
Jumpers
bags.
for goalposts.
So,
yeah, absolutely. Right, let's move on to The Guardian's front page. And it's gone with the Suffolk fire, which is burning near the nuclear plant there. This is a really good shot of the heathland that's burning there. And this is another element to it as well. I mean, this isn't just scrubland that's going, or even farmland. This is heathland, which has got a huge amount of wild animals and wild creatures in it, which has taken many, many years to get back to its original state. And it's going to take years and years for this to recover, isn't it?
It is, yeah, you're quite right. The environmental impact will be stark, and especially for wildlife there. And that's why I think we're going to see more and more of this year on year as climate change continues, and we need to learn to adapt so that we do have the resources and the infrastructure to act quickly. Here, we have got people acting quickly, and I think there were 55 fire engines there. But you have to ask the question, if there were multiple in the region, would we have the capability and the resources to be able to handle that? And these are the types of things that we need to work through. Because look at the drought. Half the country is in drought. Yet, if we had one of the wettest winters, because we've got this kind of whiplash weather, we haven't built our reservoirs in time. We haven't been storing the water like we should have done. So I think it's time that we woke up to the situation we're living in.
Alicia, as you were pointing out, the Cairngorms fire is even bigger, 10 times the size of this, but not next to a nuclear plant and over a more remote area. But
yeah, but still, you know...
And we've got had them in Wales as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, there have been fires, like, you know, even in the kind of London area as well. I mean, it is really frightening. And I think the climate is changing really quickly. You know, yes, people can say, look, we had a hot summer back in, was it 1976? But this is not normal. This is not what any of us are used to. And you just look at this very arresting optic on the front of The Guardian. And this is, you know, this is like kind of Constable country, right? You know, this could be a sort of beautiful kind of Constable painting if it wasn't for the people with the hoses and things like that. And you just think, gosh, this is frightening. And as Michelle says, there are going to be more and more fires happening. And if our resources are kind of stretched, literally fighting fires on all fronts, that's going to be really problematic when we don't have a lot of public money swishing around. We know that there's been cuts to the fire service and things like that. So this is really, really, really serious. And in terms of the reservoir point, absolutely, really good point. That, I'm afraid, also goes back to what a dismal failure privatisation of the water companies has been. The fact that there isn't sufficient infrastructure, there aren't these reservoirs. We already have the horror of sort of sewage being pumped into the seas and leaks not being dealt with, but they have not built the sufficient infrastructure to store water adequately as well.
Well, not from pages, but one of our stories. A fugitive fraudster tracked down in Tenerife by Sky News has been flown to the UK and arrested after more than a year on the run. This is Pamela Gwinnett, and she isolated vulnerable pensioner Joan Green from her family and then raided £300,000 from her life savings, spending it on luxuries, including Botox treatment. She fled the UK and was convicted in her absence and sentenced to 6 years in prison in October 2025. These are pictures from March when Sky News tracked her down to a seaside apartment in the south of Tenerife. She'd fled to the island in breach of her bail conditions whilst awaiting trial, and she was arrested there earlier this month. Well, tonight we followed police as they met Gwinnett off the plane at Manchester Airport and asked by our correspondent Phoebe Southworth if she still intends to appeal her conviction and sentence. She appeared to nod her head. Have a listen.
Pamela, do you want to apologise to June Green's family? Do you regret taking the money, Pamela? What did you spend it on in Tenerife? Are you worried about tomorrow, Pamela? More time on your sentence, potentially?
Switch up my way, mate.
Is it finally time to apologise, Pamela?
Just...
Do you still intend to appeal your conviction and sentence, Pamela?
The cops a bit of space.
Is that a yes, Pamela?
Yeah. Under arrest for failure to appear. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questions when you later rely in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. The necessity for your arrest is to prevent escape. Okay?
Oh, can I just take this back?
Yeah.
Just going to cite it out for you.
Right. Can I give you a quick search before you go in, okay?
You like to take it off?
Is there anything on you that could harm you on it? Anything sharp or anything that could harm you? You just part your legs for us. Yeah.
Guys, watch back this car.
We just need to dig
Pamela, would you like to say sorry to Jayne Green's family? Are you worried your sentence is going to be increased, Pamela? You've been away more than a year.
Well, Phoebe gave us this update after that encounter.
Well, as you can see, Pamela Gwinnett was remaining very tight-lipped when we spoke to her just outside the terminal building here. But I don't know if you could see when I asked her if she was still intending to appeal her conviction and sentence, there was the faintest of nods. So it seems like she's still resolute, as she told us earlier this year in Tenerife, that she has done nothing wrong. Well, a couple of things might be on Pamela Gwinnett's mind this evening. First of all, the life she's left behind in Tenerife. We heard from neighbours she was living in the lap of luxury. She was seen swimming in the communal pool at this lovely apartment complex she was at. People who knew her said she enjoyed shopping trips. She was out getting her nails done at the nail salon. So that's something that she's going to not be seeing for a number of years now, at least 6. And perhaps also Pamela will be thinking about potentially tomorrow her 6-year sentence for fraud and other offences being increased because of the fact she absconded. But an extraordinary conclusion here tonight in Manchester to a case that we followed so closely, and immense relief from Jayne Green, the victim's family, that Gwinnett is now going to face justice here in the UK.
Well, the cracking journalism there from Phoebe tracking her down. And Michelle, it does also highlight the fact that a lot of these scams from people you do and don't know, in this case she actually befriended this woman, are more and more common, aren't they?
They certainly are, and this is a horrible story, and I think we all think about if it had been our mother or father or grandparents. And these people are literally preying on vulnerabilities of the elderly, and that might include loneliness or confusion. And look where this has led. So your heart has to go out to the poor victim's family in this particular situation as well. And this has been really drawn out while this woman lived it up in Tenerife.
And if you look on paper, Aisha, it's a conviction for fraud. Somebody might look at that and think, oh, what's that? You don't forget, but the impact on these people's lives of what's been done to them, it's just horrific.
It is absolutely horrific, and we are seeing a real rise in fraud and scamming, particularly because we live our lives more online. And Michelle is right, a lot of people are targeting older people who are often lonely and, they want some company. Romance scams are like a big thing. There was that big Netflix documentary, The Tinder Swindler, and I actually interviewed on my radio show one of his victims, and she was saying that this is happening on such a regular basis, but a lot of people don't feel nervous about coming forward because they feel shame. They feel really embarrassed that they fell in. People are like, how could you be so stupid to fall in love with somebody online? But we live in a world where people often meet people online, and people do feel lonely, and these people are kind of expert emotional manipulators. They know people's emotional kind of pin codes in terms of how to get them to open up. So, I mean, I'm really glad this woman has been caught, but my goodness, that poor woman and her family must be absolutely furious with her. And I think there needs to be more done to help support people and educate people, and much more needs to be done to catch these people as well.
Yeah. Well, coming up, we're going to tell you why a hiker chose to walk 10 miles down a mountain after being impaled by his pole.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians.
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK?
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr. Walker, you're anti-abortion, but 2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism? I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr. Navarro,
I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a 4th indictment?
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor. I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Now let's finish with a story about a man who was impaled by a hiking pole and walked 10 miles down a mountain to safety. Now, if you're squeamish, I would urge you to look away now. This is David Cifaldi. He was climbing Montana's Granite Peak when he slipped and was impaled by his trekking pole. It missed all of his major organs, but rather than call for a helicopter rescue, he walked out the park. We're all looking behind our fingers at these images as we put them on the telly. Let's just have a listen.
Search and rescue coming to help you is free. The flight's not. And so that was obviously a factor in me deciding to self-rescue. But the fact that I had two experienced great friends with me, and we had the ability to contact search and rescue if something went wrong, made that a lot more of an easy decision.
Wow, Michelle, I didn't realise that finance wasn't one of the elements. I guess if you know you've got to pay for the cost of the search and rescue flight, that would sharpen your mind a little bit, wasn't it? At least it wasn't in his legs.
Quite. I mean, I don't think I could do that, money or no money. I think he must have a high pain threshold. In the rest of the interview, he actually says it was a bit of a nuisance going down like that. I mean, it's a bit more than a nuisance for most people, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, how on earth How on earth did that happen?
This is why I never go hiking. This is why I
never
stay
go hiking
away.
with a pole.
Just never go hiking. This is why I'm very adverse to anything remotely adventurous or in the outdoors. I just can't believe how calm he was. Just like, yeah, I just like, well, just thought about there's a cost of living crisis on. I just thought I'd save myself some money. I mean, I mean, it's a lot. Those pictures, I'm like, I'm really squeamish.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a great story now down the Hiker's Bar. He's going to have beers bought for him at every Hiker's Bar for the rest of his life, isn't he?
It might become his chat-up line, you think? Yeah, you never know.
I mean, at least he had people with him, you know.
Yeah, thankfully, thank God he wasn't sort of, you know, by himself. But I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I suppose the good thing is they didn't think, right, should we try and take it out? Because that could, I mean, that could have been so much. Messy. That could have been so much worse. So much worse.
Okay, we'll leave you with that. And the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
It is cooler for most and more unsettled, but there is no significant rain expected over England and Wales. Generally a fine start tomorrow, but northern and western parts will be fairly cloudy, with a few showers, mainly near the coasts. East Anglia and the southeast look quite cloudy too. Cloud there will clear during the morning, leaving southern Britain mostly dry and sunny, but East Anglia may see the odd coastal shower. Elsewhere, many places will stay dry with sunny spells.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello tonight on The Wrap. Europe boycotts the World Cup. A red card for Infantino. UEFA says none of its national teams will take part in any FIFA competition unless it abandons its plan to put the World Cup up for sale. Britain's biggest nuclear power station is on alert over a wildfire just 3 miles away. More than 100 firefighters are still fighting the blaze. Border chaos. Spain sends in the army after thousands of migrants overwhelmed border guards and stormed the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. And a row erupts over Diane Abbott's readmission to the Labour Party. The UK's leading Jewish organisation calls it an early test of resolve for the Burnham administration. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the Labour peer and broadcaster Baroness Hazarika and the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Michelle Dolan. Plus, a first look at tomorrow's front pages on the papers in half an hour's time. Hello, good evening. England, Scotland and every other European nation have voted to boycott the World Cup. The unanimous decision is designed to stop FIFA boss Gianni Infantino from selling a stake in the tournament to private investors, led by the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law. And this evening, a second confederation, CONCACAF, has also rejected the plans. Aisha, your thoughts on this?
Oh, it's just so awful. It's just such a tawdry, awful story. And, you know, Infantino is such a preposterous character. I mean, he's infatuated with Donald Trump. Donald Trump got that ridiculous peace prize, they made up because he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. Infantino kind of made up, have a FIFA. I mean, we should have seen the signs coming, guys. We should have seen the signs coming. Then there was the ludicrous spectacle of him bowing to Donald Trump and reversing the ban on the player. I mean, this is just incredibly depressing and really tawdry. There's already a lot of money in football. There's a lot of money around the World Cup. But this is a thing which brings people together. It shouldn't be flogged off to Donald Trump's family.
And Michelle, you know, do you think this might be the end for Infantino?
Well, I certainly hope it is. He seems to be a power-hungry individual and he's let it go to his head. And we've seen today this announcement, which is outrageous. It's just sheer profiteering. It's commercialising football and Americanising it as well. And this is the beautiful game that belongs to the fans. It shouldn't be carved up and sold for shares.
Well, our sports correspondent Rob Harris has the latest.
Gianni Infantino's future as FIFA president is looking increasingly precarious. I'm hearing of a growing loss of support in his leadership in world football. It follows both the UEFA and CONCACAF confederations covering Europe and North America publicly rejecting Infantino's attempts to sell off part of the World Cup to private investors. Now, UEFA members met at an emergency meeting 2 days after I revealed that they were considering a boycott of the World Cup. And that came to pass in their meeting. They issued this statement which said in part that no UEFA national teams will participate in any FIFA competition for so long as these proposals remain alive, unless this proposal has been abandoned in its entirety. And binding assurances have been given that FIFA will never again open its governance or competitions to private ownership. UEFA also talked about it being irresponsible and indefensible, the fact that Infantino was conceiving these plans in secret, and talked about it being an act of coercion and governance by intimidation as FIFA sets a September the 19th deadline for members to accept, dangling the prospect of potentially over the next 12 years earning more than $80 million. And if they reject it now and others approve, saying that they could miss out on fortunes. But I uncovered that while Infantino is saying that this is a consultation phase, they have a private document showing they're already planning to receive the cash in October. Cash that would come from investors who haven't been named. What the plan is, worked on with JP Morgan, is to potentially sell off 20% of this new venture that FIFA says will be worth $20 billion, about £15 billion. They want $4.2 billion from external investors, and this is going completely against what the world of football wants, as we're hearing, because the CONCACAF region, North America, their members met after UEFA and they firmly rejected the proposals And I discovered after the meeting that the majority of the 41 members, I'm told, are either losing confidence in Infantino or have already lost confidence in his leadership. Infantino himself today was in Morocco with the king there, showing how he mixes so often now with global leaders. That's the stratosphere he sees himself in, but he's been brought right down to earth with the backlash against this attempt to sell off the World Cup commercial rights externally to investors. And there is open revolt and civil war now in the world of football, with big questions about whether or not Infantino will be able to survive after a decade in power. One senior figure telling me he can't do. The question is, what brings him down, and can this plan at all survive, with now 96 of the 211 global FAs publicly opposing this project from FIFA and Gianni Infantino?
And Rob's report there, Aisha, included all those pictures of that fantastic Peace Prize with President Trump, just for you.
Just as a little special treat for me. I mean, it's just so depressing because the World Cup was born out of the First World War when Jules Rimet saw that the power, the collective power, the good, the fact that football could be a force for good coming out of the First World War. How could you
there
bring...
were those moments, weren't there, when both sides stilled and they came across
and played football together, absolutely. And he had seen that, and he had been sort of working out, like, really in the field. And, we saw that at the World Cup. We're living in very divisive, polarised times, and this was a month where everybody did come together and enjoy the collective good that football can provide. It just feels very tawdry, and he is just he has just demeaned himself so much. I mean, he's basically... This is kind of... What is happening in terms of the Trump family and him and cutting up all these deals, it's immoral. It's going to kill what is an incredibly important championship for the whole world. And to me, and this is just my humble opinion, it smacks of something pretty tawdry and I think kind of corrupt.
From Rob's piece there, it was interesting what he was saying about CONCACAF, that the Confederation of North and Central America and the Caribbean Association Football. So fundamentally, the people that just held the World Cup, that they are losing confidence in Gianni Infantino as FIFA president. So do you think it will be them that bring him down?
It could well be. The pressure is certainly mounting. It feels that way. And even UEFA on its own, I mean, it would be quite ludicrous if we had a World Cup without the country that had just won, the previous one, as in Spain. But there's so much wrong with this announcement today, but mainly football is meant to be a game that is really easy to play. You just need a ball, a group of people. You can do a makeshift goal with bags or jumpers. It's meant to be inclusive, and this is certainly not inclusive. And it's on the back of a World Cup where we saw eye-watering ticket prices, excluding some people. We saw water breaks introduced just to get more revenue from the adverts. We saw the cozying up blatantly to Trump and the allowing of him to completely and utterly photobomb the trophy ceremony. There were already big questions about his leadership, and a lot of people were angry. This has just added a lot of salt onto the wound.
Yeah, there couldn't be a World Cup without England or Germany or Spain or a party without Scotland.
Well, exactly. No. I mean, that was just amazing. Although there was this great story about how the Tartan Army had such a good time in Boston that some of the fans were saying in 9 months just check if the birth rate might have gone up. And there was this great thing which someone said to me. There's a new MAGA campaign
coming out with We Tam O'Shanter's.
Yeah, there was a new MAGA campaign, Make America Ginger Again. In terms of that, the Tartan Army is going to leave its indelible mark. But these are all the great
sent a traffic cone back.
These are all the great stories about all the countries coming together, little boys, girls watching the football, staying up late. It just feels so depressing that, as Michelle said, this is a forced good, and it's not like there isn't money being made off the back of this. Football is a very commercialised game. But why does everything have to be taken to this nth degree? And the fact is, Donald Trump didn't even know very much about football, didn't have any interest in football, then saw it, sees a commercial opportunity, he's like, oh, there's a shiny bauble thing that me and my family could make some money off. Let's get, Infantino in and let's cut a deal. I mean, it's so depressing, this idea you have to flog off everything. Anything that's good and popular has to be completely flogged off to the point where it becomes kind of meaningless.
Well, that story is featuring on the front of all of the tabloids tomorrow. Front of the Mirror with that great headline, Red Card for Infantino. Now, Britain's biggest nuclear power station is on alert with a huge wildfire just 3 miles away. A minimum of 12 fire engines will remain on the scene overnight, and a helicopter is still in use, dropping 1,000 litres of seawater with every pass. But firefighters have said in the past hour that the blaze, they think, is beginning to stabilise. Our science and technology editor Tom Clark reports.
Hot on the heels of drought and record-breaking heat, fire season has arrived in England. Raging between the sea, a nuclear power plant, coastal caravans and cottages, this Suffolk heathland is ablaze. All the wildfire needs is fuel and a breeze to fan the flames, both in abundance here. Tinder-dry scrub funneling flames into parched trees above. The wind is now taking the fire away from the Sizewell B nuclear power plant, but on this popular stretch of Suffolk coast, it still threatens homes and holiday parks. And wildlife too. This coastal heathland and adjacent wetlands are nationally important habitat. In the early hours, the fire service had the blaze under control, but then the wind picked up. A helicopter, 18 appliances from across the country, and 120 firefighters are now hurrying to contain it.
They are confident that their tactics are working and they are making good progress, attacking the fire from the north of where the fire is by digging trenches and filling in with water as well, and that seems to be working. So good progress is being made. That said, anything could still happen until the fire is out completely, so it's still moving about at the moment.
The scene below me is pretty apocalyptic. This enormous wildfire, 100 hectares it's covering, spreading right down to the sea. I can see numerous fire crews spread out, and the fire's broken up into multiple fronts, with the winds changing erratically, apparently, at the moment, making it all that more difficult to contain and control. Power has been cut to around 116 homes as flames encroach on pylons. Dozens of people were evacuated overnight from homes and caravans threatened by the fire and given refuge at this village hall.
It was concerning. It wasn't too frightening because at that stage the fire wasn't too close to ourselves and our lodge.
As we were leaving Minsmere Road, we could see red flames sort of behind Mount Pleasant Farm, that sort of area, so we knew we'd made the right decision.
The fire is dwarfed by those on the continent in recent days, but it's still visible from space. A heat-detecting NASA satellite picking up this hot spot over Suffolk. And this latest assessment of fire danger shows how much of central and southern England and Wales are now at higher wildfire risk. Whatever the spark, wildfires are an inevitable consequence of weeks without significant rain and one heat wave after another. For the emergency services, infrastructure providers and anyone else who's experienced this summer's weather, a reminder of the new normal to which we have to adapt, while a changing climate holds our feet to the fire. Tom Clark, Sky News, Dunwich Heath in Suffolk.
Well, Michelle, it does seem at least good news tonight that it seems to be stabilising a little bit. Power's back on at 111 of the 116 affected properties as well, so that's great for the people there. But a lot of them aren't in their homes, of course. They're in respite centres, aren't they?
Yeah, and some of these people were holidaymakers, and the villages next door have put them up, according to the Metro. So it's been a bit of a community effort as well to support these people. But it must have been absolutely terrifying for them, because we know the speed at which fire can travel, and we've seen those horrific stories of what's been happening in France, and these people will have been watching that thinking, oh, isn't that awful, but it's a long way from me, and now it's literally happening here in England. And I think that it's just the signs of the times. We're going to be seeing more and more of these fires, and we have to now do some big deep dives and thinking about how do we have the infrastructure, the capability to be able to respond, especially if there are multiple large-scale fires in the same region. This took 55, I believe, fire engines just to deal with this. Imagine if they were doing this in 4 different areas in the same county.
Yeah, 200 wildfires in the past fortnight, Aisha. I heard one of the people that runs one of those caravan sites in that area today on the radio saying that she wants disposable barbecues banned. No evidence that this was particularly caused by that, but she thinks that that is something that is just an accident waiting to happen and could be a cause of many future wildfires.
Well, she's probably right, and maybe we are going to have to look at lots of things like that, but then people will push back and say, hang on a minute, this is like the nanny state, and, you know, why can't I have my disposable barbecue? I mean, we are, as Michelle has alluded to, we are in a very, very new world. The climate is changing. It has changed. It's changing right before our eyes. We mentioned the Cairngorms fires as well. That is not a part of the world you would think about in terms of forest fires. They've been raging for like over a week. And of course, tourism is a huge part of the Cairngorms. It's been massively problematic there as well. So we're in a whole new world, and it is frightening. It is really frightening for people that this extreme weather is here. And we're all going to have to think about how we adjust our infrastructure, our resilience, our resources, how we live, what to do if there is a fire. I mean, these are very... And I really hate the way that discussion about climate change and net zero has become this massive political football. We're in it, whether you like it or not, whether you like Ed Miliband or not, whether you agree with climate. We're in this now, and we are going to have big conversations about how our society's got to change, how we allocate resources has to change, and how we're going to sort of deal. There are going to be more of these fires going forward, sadly.
Well, another big conversation that's happening this evening is within the Labour Party, because Diane Abbott and Jayne Reid have been readmitted to the party and had the whip restored. East Kilbride MP Jayne Reid voluntarily suspended herself after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China, while veteran left-winger Diane Abbott was kicked out of the party last year, saying she didn't regret previous marks about racism, which sparked an anti-Semitism row. Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Rob Powell. So, Rob, just remind us what the Labour Party is saying tonight and how we got here.
Yeah, we got here. Basically, it's two allegations or two incidents that were investigated in relation to Diane Abbott that led to this suspension a year ago. One related to a letter that she wrote to a newspaper where basically she said that black people experienced racism in a different way to Jewish people and essentially equated what Jewish people felt to something more akin to, say, what people with ginger hair would feel. She got suspended at the time for writing that. That was back in 2023, and then she was readmitted in time for the election. She then gave an interview last year, I think it was, basically saying she didn't have any regrets about how that played out, and sort of explained and fleshed out her thinking a little bit more. She was then suspended again, in part because of that, but also because of a post she'd put out where she referred to the Jewish Defence Force rather than the Israeli Defence Force, the Defence Force for the State of Israel. There's been a process over the last year. It's basically ended with a formal warning for Diane Abbott, and she's been readmitted to the party, given her membership back, and then it's been decided that she'll become a Labour MP again. She's been given the whip back as well. She's released a statement this evening in which she said, "Today, following a process conducted in line with party rules and approved by the independent review process, I've been readmitted into the Labour Party. I've been issued with a formal warning for a tweet I'd previously posted. By inadvertently referring to the Israeli Defence Forces as the Jewish Defence Forces, I used wording that conflates the actions of the State of Israel with the Jewish community. I'm deeply sorry for any hurt caused by the conflation and apologise for any hurt caused by it. I've been and remain a lifelong anti-racist and remain deeply committed to opposing racism in all forms." That apology clearly is about the comments she made about Jewish Defence Forces. It doesn't address the sort of older comments, the 2023 comments. And interestingly, the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism has spotted this evening that actually the interview from last year that also got Diane Abbott into a bit of trouble, where she talks about not regretting those comments, is still pinned to the top of her ex-Twitter social media feed. So I guess it does beg the question that she's apologised for that part of it, but, you know, what is her thinking now, and does she regret the other comments, which clearly have caused a lot of hurt as well?
Aisha, as a Labour peer, do you think she should just apologise? It would make things a lot more straightforward.
Well, I think you saw she has made some apology there, and I hope she does, and I hope she does think about why those comments caused so much hurt. I think originally with the letter she wrote to The Guardian, she did sort of try and retract it and had said that, you know, she had made a mistake doing that. But look, her comments were wrong. They are wrong. They have caused a lot of hurt to a lot of people. There are, I know, I've just been looking at my own messages, but there is some concern from sort of senior Jewish figures within the party. I also say this, though, Diane Abbott's a really important figure in the Labour movement. To so many of us growing up, me as a young Asian girl, to many of the black community, she was the first woman of colour to enter British politics. She was a real trailblazer. She herself has suffered horrific racism and misogyny and has had, you know, terrible times in terms of the abuse that gets levelled at her. So I hope that because she has had this abuse and a lot of racism, she will understand why the Jewish community is hurting so much at the moment, particularly when anti-Semitism is at such a high. We had the terrible murders at the Heaton Park Synagogue. We had people attacked in Golders Green. We know that anti-Semitism is off the charts at the moment. I hope that she will reflect on her comments, and I hope that she will take time to speak to the Jewish community. She's got a big Jewish patch in her own constituency in Hackney, which she's spoken about before. But I hope that there is a place for her in the Labour Party, somebody who has been such a trailblazer, particularly as for black women. But I do hope she also takes the time to reflect on her comments.
Michelle, do you welcome Diane Abbott coming back to the House of Commons?
So I think I feel the same way as many of members of the Jewish community who are a bit confused and concerned by this, because she did double down on that and refused to apologise. And there doesn't seem to be that full apology for all that she has said. And it's alarming to learn that that interview is still pinned to the top of her social media account. But I think what's more concerning is the fact that this is one of the acts by a new Burnham administration. And he has made the conscious decision as Prime Minister and leader of the party to restore that whip to Diane Abbott, and that therefore raises big questions over his commitment to tackle anti-Semitism, which we know has been a big issue within the Labour Party. They've tried to grapple it. Keir Starmer made many attempts on this and did a big movement on it. And the last thing that people want is a move backwards, because we should have no anti-Semitism in our country, and we know that it is rife at the moment, and the Jewish community, quite rightly, want their leaders and their politicians to be leading the way and showing that this cannot be tolerated.
Yeah. Right, lots more to come after the break, including chaos in Ceuta as thousands of people break through the border into the Spanish territory.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Well, let's return to migration and the chaos at Europe's borders. Spain is sending its military in to restore order in the Spanish territory of Ceuta on the North African coast after migrants from Morocco overwhelmed police. Thousands of people broke through the land border into the Spanish enclave, with many others swimming from neighbouring beaches. Officials in Ceuta say the border has totally collapsed and the situation is absolute chaos. Here, 4 people died trying to cross the channel following the busiest day of the year so far for small boat crossings, with 752 arrivals.
If you look at the picture in 2026 compared to last year, 2025, there is significant progress in terms of reducing the number of crossings, the number of people coming over. But there is much further to be done to get the grip on the issue that we require. The Home Secretary is applying that grip, and I'm grateful to her, but more is needed to get those numbers right down. The removals are up too, though, and this is another part of the story that people need to understand. You know, there is progress being made on all fronts, but more is needed.
Michelle, we have had a lot of people coming across in the last 24 hours. 752 is an extraordinary number, isn't it? But we have to put it in perspective. When we look at the figures over the last year, they're down 45%. That's a big drop for those coming over illegally on the small boats.
And I would welcome any decrease, but I think it's too early to be adamant that that is the trend. It's my understanding that weather conditions, meaning very choppy waters with very high waves, have actually deterred the travel, and so it's more down to the weather than any policies. And the Sun did a big expose this week where they were exposing the fact that the French, despite all the money that we were giving, were literally refusing to do anything. So we still have a big problem. The gangs are certainly not smashed by any stretch of the imagination, but of course we all want them to come down, and we should all celebrate when the numbers come down, but I don't think we should count it as a victory and complete progress yet.
Aisha, do you think the government does have a clear strategy on this?
As much as any government can. I mean, this is a huge issue and it has affected subsequent governments. I mean, Rishi Sunak famously staked his political career on the phrase, stop the boats. And of course, that's a really difficult pledge to sign up to, because as we were seeing from those pictures in Spain, this is not a situation which is unique to Britain. Any wealthier, cooler, stable country in Europe that has any kind of water where you can land is going to be facing these problems. We see it in Greece, we've seen it in Italy, we're seeing it in Spain. So I think, as Andy Burnham said, and I think it was interesting that I don't think he was being complacent there. He was saying there is still a lot to do, but, you know, they are down 45%, the removals are up. Net migration is down a lot as well. But this is a really big problem.
That's down to Rishi Sunak's policy, isn't it, on care?
Well, it is also down to, you know, look, if those net migration figures had been going up under this government, everyone would be saying this is an absolute terrible thing that it's going up. So, of course, look, we can go right back. The reason why net migration shot up was actually under Boris Johnson. I mean, it's been dubbed the Boris wave, but I don't think this is the right time to sort of, you know, point score necessarily, or we've got to fix this, but it is going to be difficult to fix, you know, and these boat crossings are incredibly dangerous. 4 people lost their lives, 3 of them women, we've got to find a way of getting the message across to people. This is not a safe way to come to this country. This is, you know, you're not, you know, going to just be allowed to stay if you get to this country. We have to open up, in my view, safe and legal routes. But we also have to be honest that with climate change, with conflict, people are going to be migrating to Europe in ever larger numbers. So we collectively have to work with our partners to find a way to handle it.
And I think Aisha is right. This is not a problem that is just plaguing our shores. It's a European problem. But I think what is different about what we're facing is the fact that, you know, a number of these economic migrants go across many countries to get here, many safe countries to get here. And I think that's the thing that the British public find particularly jarring, because it seems very unfair that they think we're such a soft touch that they can travel through all these other safe places and still think, no, England is the place where I'm going to get given my handouts and an easier ride. And that is something that successive governments have not managed to stamp out, and that's something that we need to tackle.
Yeah, and conflict, of course, is one of the major reasons
conflict
that drives
is a huge thing,
migration.
and it's also just really important to say that it's not true to say that everyone, you know, let's say you're in Sudan or somewhere, you know, there's horrendous war happening. You look at what's happening in Iran, actually lots of people, you know, you've got America bombing Iran. We actually have a lot of Iranian people coming over. But lots of people do go to countries nearby, and they do go to refugee camps nearby. It's not true to say that everybody just goes, right, I'm going to come to England because it's a soft touch. England and Britain is often a destination because of it's a hangover from the days of the empire, where people thought, you know, Britain was a big part of their history. Britain was a big part of their world. Many people might have family here. English is seen as you know, they learnt English at school or whatever. So that's a one reason, but it's not. I think it's just not accurate to say that everyone just kind of comes over to England in droves.
Yeah. We've just got some breaking news, which I've just got to bring our viewers. And this is from President Trump. He's put out a message on Truth Social, and this is about the Board of Peace that he set up to try to get some kind of resolution in the Middle East. He says, today the Board of Peace reached a historic agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas and all other armed groups in Gaza. This is a monumental step towards lasting peace and security. This agreement is a critical step towards Gaza finally being governed by a new Palestinian government that will work closely with the Board of Peace to help the Palestinian people. At the same time, Israel will have the security it deserves, with Gaza no longer used as a base for terror attacks. He goes on to say it's a major milestone in the implementation of the Trump 20-point plan. The agreement will be carried out in a carefully structured phases. As disarmament is completed, Israeli forces will withdraw, and the International Stabilization Force will work with a new Palestinian police force to take responsibility for Gaza being safe for its residents and its neighbours. He says 1 year ago there was a violent, raging war, humanitarian crisis and hostages kept in brutal captivity. We've made historic progress. There's still much work to do. I want to thank the mediators, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey, for their important efforts, and especially my team, whose tireless work made this possible. The threat that emerged from Gaza on October the 7th will not be allowed to rebuild. Under this agreement, Gaza will finally be in the hands of the new Palestinian government that serves its people. Congratulations to all on this amazing development that everybody said could never be achieved. So that a Truth Social message from President Trump, who says that the Board of Peace that he set up to try to reach some kind of framework for peace between Israel and the Palestinian territories in Gaza has reached an agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas. Now, we haven't had any statement yet from Hamas or any of the other Palestinian organisations yet. So we wait to see what their take is on whatever agreement has been made. But it does sound like that there has certainly been progress in the talks there. Any development on that, and we will bring it to you. Right, let's see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. The Times is leading with the news that UEFA will boycott the World Cup if FIFA goes ahead with plans to sell off the tournament. The Star reports 55 of UEFA's member associations backed proposals for a boycott. And the Express says it could see England pull out of the qualifiers for the 2030 World Cup. While the Sun goes with a headline, football's staying home. Red card for Infantino, reads the Mirror, as another football confederation also rejects the FIFA president's plans. And the front of the Eye labels UEFA's stance a game changer. Elsewhere, the Telegraph says the government's planning an £18 million council tax raid. The Daily Mail reports Prime Minister Andy Burnham's plans to break away from Ed Miliband's net zero agenda by drilling in the North Sea. The Metro leads with the huge wildfires in Suffolk near the Sizewell B nuclear plant. The Guardian reports that the Labour Party chair, Bridget Phillipson, has written to the Electoral Commission calling for an investigation into allegations of sleaze against Reform UK, claims which have been repeatedly denied. And finally, the Financial Times has the Bank of England holding interest rates at 3.75%. Well, let's quickly take a look through them. Let's return to FIFA very briefly, because we've covered it a lot tonight. But the back of the Times has got a piece by Martin Ziegler from the Times. Now, he was the man that broke the story in the first place a couple of nights ago. All European nations withdrawing from FIFA over these plans, he says. And Michelle, it's interesting to think, isn't it, that Europe's stars, they have all the aces here, haven't they? Because they really have the stars. There are obviously some, South American fantastic footballers, but by and large, when you think of the European teams, those are the ones that so many people were coming to the World Cup to see. Without them, there isn't really a World Cup, is there?
Well, quite. Spain's just literally won as well. And the fact that it isn't just UEFA on their own, but we've seen the Asian Football Confederation and others come forward as well and voice their concerns, means that the pressure is really mounting. And surely there has to be a U-turn on this. They have to read the room and recognise that this is beyond unpopular. People are incandescent, and quite rightly, with rage, that the beautiful game, their game, the fans' game, is about to be sold off for profiteering, commercialisation and Americanisation, which is just not OK.
Aisha, do you think this is the end of Infantino?
Well, it should be. If it goes ahead, it'll be the end of the World Cup. And as Martin Ziegler, brilliant football writer, has said, look, if the European nations pull out, this kills the project, because why would investors buy stakes in a competition when the best teams aren't playing? But apparently there was this, well, not apparently, there was this emergency Zoom meeting today. It was understood that more than 40 federations, including the FA here, spoke, and one source said that there was total unanimity and a lot of anger at how they had been treated. So this, it's very good that everybody is standing together, and there's real anger about this. Hopefully, collectively, the forces can come together and stop this. As Michelle said, what is just basically rampant greed and I think corruption as well.
Onto the front of the Telegraph, its lead story is that Labour is going to bring in £18 billion through council tax. They're calling it a council tax raise. They're saying the rise would add another £500 to average council tax bills by the end of the decade, despite Andy Burnham's pledge to make tackling the cost of living his #1 priority. Aisha, I'll get your thoughts on that quickly.
Well, look, let's see if this goes ahead. This is what the Telegraph is reporting. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Remember, not that long ago, we were all being reporting that Shabana Mahmood was 100% going to be the Chancellor, and then we all got slightly blindsided. So I'd probably take that with a slight pinch of salt, but we'll have to wait and see. The budget will be the time when John Healey, the new Chancellor, will set out his tax and spend plans.
There is going to be some kind of change, though, isn't there? It seems around housing and around stamp duty and around council tax generally, we think.
Yes, there's been a lot of speculation about that. But part of the reason why there could be this dramatic increase in council tax is because of the plans for more large-scale mayoralties. And, of course, they have the ability to add a premium onto people, so an additional ask for money. And the Telegraph are saying that a council tax, the average, could go up by £500 a year. Now, people are really struggling in this country to make ends meet as it is, and to be able to put food on the table for their families. The last thing they want to do is contemplate more tax rises that they just can't afford. So hopefully the government will recognise that this is a backward move. If we want growth, we want opportunities, we want jobs, and we want to put the cost of living as our #1.
OK. Right, lots more to come. After the break, we will take a look at what is on the front pages and the inside pages of lots of the papers, so don't go anywhere.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. We're taking a closer look at what's inside tomorrow's papers and inside the Times tomorrow on page 6. They've got a story about reoffending rates and they're at a record high, Aisha. 70,000 inmates have been released early. And is it showing that you can't let people out early if they haven't been rehabilitated, if they haven't done that bit at the end of their time which teaches them how to move back into normal life?
We have got a very deep systemic problem with our criminal justice system and the fact that whether it's through the school system, whether it's through society, we have created conditions where there is a revolving door of people coming in and out of prison. I went to visit Brixton Prison a few years ago and I was shocked at how many really young men were in there, and this was their third or fourth. This was not their first story, this was like their third or fourth time in prison. So we have got a really, really big... Now, when you take a step back from the criminal justice system, there's lots of things going on. There's massive underfunding and the cuts are really coming home to roost. This is across the criminal justice system. But that also applies when people come out of prison because they're often released from prison. They can't get a job. They can't get a house. It's easier for them to go back into reoffending, go back... You know, when I spoke to some of those young men in Brixton Prison, they were actually saying it's kind of easier being in prison than it is on the outside. We do have a mass... But none of this stuff is easy. This is really difficult. The last Conservative government really struggled with this problem. Alex Chalk, the Justice Secretary, was very honest when he said, look, we had a massive prisons crisis. We did not have enough capacity to have people in prison. Labour have now got that problem as well. You've got a situation where government has had to let people out early because there's just not enough prison places. That is awful for the victims of crime. Often these people are going out to reoffend, so it's a huge problem.
What do you think can be done about it, Michelle?
Well, I think we have got ourselves into a real crisis because it does take time to build prisons. We can't just magic them up tomorrow. And what this article draws out is really stark. So it talks about the fact that they are being recalled back in so that they're committing a crime within that 3-month grace period at a higher rate than we're releasing them. So no wonder our prisons are so full. We really have to prioritise reoffending because it's also letting down those people, it's letting down the broader society. And I, too, have spoken to people that are in the prisons and they say similar stories. They say it isn't easier, you know, we get a bed, we get our meals, there's a community here. We shouldn't have structure. We shouldn't have people viewing our prisons as a good choice. Never should it be a choice. It should be a massive deterrent.
The rest of society out there. We've got a former tech secretary here in the studio, so it's worth asking you about the story inside the Metro. They're talking about schools embracing educational technology before they really know the damage it could cause to children. Does this concern you?
I'm really more worried about this story and the research and the damage that could do because some of the best use cases on AI and tech are actually education. Removing some of the administration, the burden on our teachers, helping them to be able to identify the specific needs of each individual child in the classroom. The opportunities are so fantastic. And we have a lot of teachers and school leadership teams that are a bit confused at the moment. They've got so much on their plate, then having to go and research what's the best technology, what's the best AI, is quite a task. Then you've got a study saying, oh, it could be doing more harm than is good. The reality is we do have to live in the century that we're in. We have to embrace technology, prepare these children for the labour market that they're going to be going into. And if schools are not using technology all day throughout the curriculum. So I don't think there's a danger from that. So I do worry about these kind of doom and gloom stories, research which over-exaggerates the situation and will keep us in the dark ages.
OK, final story, which we all love. A group of chess players, all-female team, have been told they must bring in a male player. to meet the rules. They've been told they've got to man up. Aisha, the rules say that each team in Division 1 has to have at least one man and one woman, one male, one female. These rules are brought in to try and make sure that more girls got into chess.
Yes, I mean, this is really interesting. I suppose this is a kind of a sort of weird unintended consequence where, of course, chess has been seen as quite a male thing, although it's fair to say that there's lots of brilliant women that play chess. Rachel Reeves was famously, taking on the boys. She was told she couldn't take part in a chess competition, and that really put fire in her belly. We all love the Queen's Gambit. But this is this really sort of strange, perverse thing where originally you had to have a woman on the team because there were so few women, and now there's this brilliant all-women female team, and they've been told they have to find a chap to join.
We're going to have to find one, aren't they? Thank you both very much for taking us through your choices tonight. It's been great. Coming up in the sport, why head coach Eddie Howe has decided to call it quits at Newcastle.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr Walker, you're anti-abortion, but 2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the president? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism?
I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr Navarro, can
Well, I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr Musk. Has your ego and ignorance, sir, cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a 4th indictment?
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week.
There's a teaser there, a teaser.
OK, nothing to see here, drama over, full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Let's get the latest sport now with James.
Right, here we are. First day back, I suppose. It kind of feels like, doesn't it? How is the feeling? Because everything feels quite new around here.
Now, of course, first day of pre-season with the full squad outside on the pitch today. And the first team meeting talking about our season ambition and who we want to be. It's been a great day, and of course I'm very excited, yeah.
How does it feel? It feels odd coming here. I haven't been shouted at by Katie McCabe or given a big hug by Beth Mead. There is a different feeling here today.
Yeah, you'll get them at some point, just not around Arsenal. Yeah, of course, they are legends of the club on what they've done for Arsenal, and for me it was a pleasure working with them as well. In both of them there's so much football intelligence, and learned from them, and I think Katie with her leadership, her vocality on the pitch, same with Beth, very energetic, vocal on the pitch. Of course we'll miss that, but yeah, it's a new season and we have a lot of great players coming in, and there will be new dynamics, and we have a lot of leadership in the squad as it stands, and then it's always interesting in the group dynamics. How are these different roles going to be filled with the squad that we have right now? But it looks really, really good.
The decision to sort of transform the squad, to move on from certain players, to kind of maybe get a bit younger, was taken some months ago. Was there any kind of nerves about sort of the process whilst you were going through it, especially at the end of the season when your team was playing well?
Yeah. Nerves, I don't know what word I would use, but you're always, because it's decisions for the player, for the team, for the club, and you want to make sure that for all parties involved the decisions are right. So of course there's been a lot of thinking going into these decisions. If I would say it's made me nervous, I don't think so. But yeah, I'm just really happy with Beth and Katie, the way they've ended their Arsenal time, because I think they've been playing on a really high level and have been really important for us. Likewise for Laia Codina, Vic Belova. Manuela was, of course, unfortunately out with an injury, but all these players hopefully feel like the end of their Arsenal time has been positive.
But you haven't, lots of clubs, I suppose, when they were sort of going out and starting a new structure, would have gone out and probably signed a load of young players, but you've signed quite a few players at their peak, or certainly sort of hoping to be at that peak. Was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, so of course there's a lot of different factors that we look at when we go and recruit and build a team that we think can be most successful for us. They need to be good fits for us. So how I see the game growing, athleticism I think is really important because the game becomes faster, so explosive actions.
Let's just bring you the latest update that we have on President Trump. He said that his border peace has reached a Gaza disarmament deal. In the last hour, he put out a Truth Social saying that the Palestinian group Hamas has agreed an agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas militants and other armed groups in Gaza. He says it's a major milestone in the implementation of Trump's 20-point plan to end Israel's war in Gaza. He says it's going to be carried out in phases. Israeli forces will withdraw. An international stabilization force will move in with a new Palestinian police force. We have had no word from Hamas or any of the Palestinian representatives on this. More on this. Stay with Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.